welcome to an American Talk Show. I'm your host, David Allard. I'm an attorney in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. On the show today, we have Kenny Carrabba and Stephen Femino. They're our guests, and we're grateful to have them with us today. They're people like yourselves, ordinary citizens with views and opinions about what's happening in gun control and gun control legislation. That's a big issue across the country. It's a very controversial issue. We're going to get into some of the laws regarding gun control legislation, but the most important thing is what the public thinks about it, because the public is the driving force behind the laws in this country. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, Kenny, first. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Kenneth Carrabba. I am living in Fitchburg, Mass. I was born and raised in that city. Fitchburg High School graduate. And I'm 44 years old.
And Steve, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Steve Femino. I'm a licensed electrician. I'm a small business owner, and I grew up in the small town of Barre, Massachusetts, and that's it.
Steve, we'll start with you. What would your position be with regard to guns and gun control legislation?
I think that people should be able to, if they're good citizens and they have not committed any crimes or whatnot, I think they should be able to obtain a FID card or license to carry, as long as they're decent citizens. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be able to obtain something like that.
Well, why should we allow people to have guns when they can go into schools and shoot children like that incident in Newtown? Why do we need guns?
To protect just everyday people. You need to have the rights to be able to do that, because if you didn't, you'll have people like what happened in Connecticut, which was a very, detrimental thing to everybody. But
what would happen if we banned guns altogether?
We wouldn't have any more rights, and the government could take over, and all sorts of crazy chaos could happen, and we'd have no defense to stay together if we needed to, even just in small towns, small communities, small colonies, or whatever, to protect ourselves if we needed to do that.
Well, if we banned guns altogether, would we have to worry about shootings in schools and things like that?
If you banned them from the public people, yeah, because the criminals would always have them. They'd be able to obtain them. They're only affecting the people that are law-abiding citizens, and the people that would probably have them would be criminals and the police and military. That would probably be it.
Kenny, how do you feel about that? What's your position with regard to gun legislation that bans guns?
I believe every person, in this case the United States, that's where I live, should be allowed to own a gun as long as you register the gun where legally it's attached to your name. So if that gun is used, whether it's wrongly or not, they can find out what you're doing with your gun. The criminals are going to use the guns that they're buying anyways, because they're obviously not registering guns they're going to use crimes with. So like Steve said, criminals are going to get guns no matter what, which means guns are always going to be used wrong, even if they put a restriction on them, because every study that I looked at shows that if you have gun control, crime actually doesn't change. It actually, I think it goes up.
So if you ban guns, you don't think that would accomplish the goal of avoiding mass shootings?
No, it does not at all. Every study supports differently than that. The state of Vermont has gun control. They have one of the safest states in the United States.
And we'll get into that a little bit later, but 6,583 people were killed with guns in 2011 based on the FBI statistics. Why don't you think a ban on guns would reduce or eliminate a lot of those deaths, homicides?
Because the people that are using the guns for things like murder or school shootings are not legally buying those guns, or they're using a gun from someone else. So a ban on guns doesn't stop people from committing these acts of violence. That's what I believe.
And Steve, do you hold similar views on that?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
So you feel that if there was an outright ban, the criminals would still be able to get the guns?
Oh, I think it would be, yeah. They'd be able to get the guns, and there'd be more chaos. Because they would know that they could go into basically any house that they wanted to, if they chose to, and break in and do whatever they needed to do, whether they're hurting people or stealing or theft or anything like that. And people go into like certain, like community that I live in now, Ocam, Massachusetts. We have one of the safest areas. I mean, we still have break-ins, but we have a high amount of people that have guns. So you don't see a lot of people breaking into the areas. I mean, compared to like the cities or other places. But if they were to ban that, it could be really crazy. Could be chaotic.
Let's talk a little bit about a semi-automatic gun. And a semi-automatic gun is a self-loading gun. Why should you have self-loading guns? Why do we need semi-automatic guns? I'll talk with you, Steve, first.
When you say semi-automatic, or do you mean full automatic?
Semi-automatic. A semi-automatic.
You just pull the trigger.
It's a self-loading. It does all the necessary steps.
Which is what the police
okay,
use
I see
on
what you
duty.
mean. Yeah, okay.
So why do we need semi-automatic guns?
It's preference. It's all preference. Some people some people are hunters and they're handicapped and they have a harder time, so they have automatics. People like to do range firing. They have automatics for that. I mean,
well, wouldn't that be more dangerous with regard to mass shootings in schools? Why do we need to have automatic loading guns?
Why do we need to? I don't really think there's no need for it, but it's just like a preference. It's like, do you need power windows in your car? No. But people like to have the convenience.
I think it's because people want to buy a gun. They don't want it to be complicated. Like Steve says, would you buy a car if it took you an hour to figure out how you're going to drive it once you started driving it?
What do you feel? How do you feel, Steve, if there were legislation banning automatic guns or semi-automatic guns?
I wouldn't agree with it. I don't.
Why is that?
I think that if you're a gun owner and you follow the right procedures, I don't think there should be limitations. I mean, I can't say people should have Uzis and have like 100, rounds capacity in their gun. I think that's a little excessive, but I don't see anything wrong with automatics. I have an automatic, and I think it's fine. It's all under the discretion. But obviously, what happened in Connecticut. I mean, some people are saying if they would have had less rounds, that maybe there would have been less casualties. Nobody knows, and that was an isolated incident, and it should have never happened. But it does happen, and it's just not much we can do about that. But whether you have a bolt action, a single fire, you're still gonna do the same thing. It's under who is actually using the weapon, if you want to call it that.
So even if it wasn't an automatic gun, if it was
they still would have. You tell me. Somebody says, okay, if they would have had not an assault rifle, they would have had shotguns. You're telling me that a shotgun with buckshot, okay, is not going to do the things that stuff does? Well, anybody that knows anything about guns, you get an assault rifle, yes, you can fire a lot of rounds, but they're individual rounds. You get a shotgun with buckshot, it scatters. You can do volume with that if you know what I mean. If you really want to get down to bare bones about it,
How about pistols? Could you do the same thing with pistols?
No, well, they don't have a pistol shotgun, but they have the pistols that they have revolver style, or they have a semi-automatic, and they have the Uzis, which most people can't get an Uzi. That's a special license altogether.
So even single-shot weapons could someone could still do mass killings even with a
mean, obviously with a single shot, you're not going to have the volume. There's no way you're not going to have the volume.
Although if you load and fire fast.
True.
Or if you have multiple guns.
Yeah, but somebody could go in there. This would be you could go into that school with knives, and you could just keep going. And you're telling me that you're not going to kill people with a knife? So, you know what I mean? It's all, the person shouldn't have been able to obtain a gun. That's the problem. And somebody should have been, more alert on that or been more secure. But, I mean, you can hurt anybody with basically anything if you really try. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to.
Kenny, I'll address this to you. Why can't we trust the police to protect us if we have problems?
Well, I don't know what you mean. I mean, the police protect you. It's their job. But if someone was going to break into your house and you were home, you don't have time to call the police if they're intending to rob you or kill you. So if you have a gun, you can protect yourself. If you wait for the police to get there, it could take 10 minutes or more, and even if it took 5 minutes, 5 minutes is a matter of life and death. So you should have a right to own a gun if your reason is to protect yourself. The reason why cops have guns on them is for the same reason why I want one, in case I need it to protect myself. If a cop goes to a crime scene, and let's say someone's doing, killing people, like at a school, do the cops go to the school without a gun? Of course they don't. Well, the same sense, that's why I want a gun. I'll go back to something that you asked that I want to hit on. Okay, cops have guns because they need to carry it for their job. 99.9% of people who buy guns do not use them for things like murder or any bad act of violence. In the same sense, most police officers, it's almost 99.5% again, will tell you they never use their gun. Sometimes 20, 30 years will go by and they do not use guns. But yet, the U.S. government wants people to believe that there's a very, very bad problem with guns. And every time there's a school shooting, they'll use this as a way to convince the public to say, oh wow, we must have a big, big gun problem in America. But the statistics don't show that there's a lot of killings. It's only when there are killings where I think the government makes more out of something that's not really there.
Yeah, and we might as well take up that issue now. England, for example, has an outright ban on guns. In fact, even carrying scissors in your pocketbook is a concealed weapon. And we talked about the fact that there were 6,000, or what's the exact figure, 6,583 people that were killed in the United States with handguns. England doesn't have a lot of people killed by handguns. However, if you make England a state in the United States, if you made it the 51st state, a fellow wrote an article about that where he said England being the 51st state would have a murder rate or homicide rate higher than several states in the United States. It'd be higher than Vermont, it'd be higher than Iowa, higher than Hawaii, higher than New Hampshire, and close to several other states.
When you say higher, you mean higher based on the population of, like say, Vermont?
A number of homicides.
Per person?
Number of homicides per 100,000 people. So, but instead of doing it with guns, they would do it with strangulation, baseball bats, poison, knives, various other ways that they.
So they have other resources, you're saying?
They have other ways
to
of
still keep
of committing the crime. And here's the article right here. It's by Richard Carey. In December 22nd, 2012, he said UK murder rate higher than some states, and he charts the states and indicates how that several of our states, the crime rate, murder rate is much lower. And if we take Vermont for example, in their gun legislation, Vermont has probably the most lenient requirements with regard to guns. There are no requirements with regard to getting a permit. In Vermont, for example, you do not need a permit to purchase a gun. Unlike Massachusetts, you need an FID to purchase a gun. You don't need there's no firearm registration. There's no assault weapon law. There's no owner license required. There's no permit to carry required. There's virtually no requirements for for guns in Vermont, but yet their crime rate is down and their murder rate is lower than England. The article in the Health News, it's called Health News. It's an article written by Deborah Kotz and Brian McCourt in the Globe. I guess it's in the Boston Globe. They indicated that the governor, as well as a state representative, David Linsky. State Representative David Linsky is a Natick Democrat who's filed a bill to tighten the Massachusetts gun laws even further. It's become very clear that those states with stronger gun violence prevention laws have lower firearm death rates. But what does that mean? Because as we see in England, if they're not killed by guns, they could be killed
with something else.
Knives, strangulation, baseball bats, poison, many other ways of killing people.
Crimes are still going to be committed one way or the other. That's what it amounts down to. If you have criminals, there's going to be crime. That's all there is to it. And you're going to, what you're saying there, you're going to put all these pressures and against people that are good citizens, that are law-abiding citizens, and you're going to penalize them and make the laws even stricter. So, they shouldn't even have them anymore. The way they're saying it, and that's not going to effectively increase or decrease the crime rate.
Right. And Linsky's bill, by the way, would require gun owners to purchase liability insurance. It require better access to mental health records, a 25% sales tax on guns and ammunition to be funneled into mental health services, and close a loophole with regard to military-style weapons manufactured before 1994, when the state banned such guns. What do you think about that, Steve? What do you think, taking those one at a time, what do you think about, how would it affect you as a gun owner with regard to having to now purchase liability insurance?
That's another expense. The economy's terrible as it is now. How, and so now it gets into the economy, now you're affecting more expense. It's just, that's unnecessary. I don't see the purpose of it. It doesn't have any, who is it benefiting? Really? Is it the states are going to get more money, more revenue because of that? And that's all? That's all it's going to do? It's not actually going to keep the guns off the street. The criminals aren't going to be penalized with this tax, just the law-abiding citizens.
I think that's just a way the government to make it harder for you to attain a gun. It's them accomplishing to do anything they can to stop you from owning a gun, and they know this could work for them.
And Kenny, what do you think about the fact that they want to hike up a 25% sales tax on guns and ammunition?
Once again, it comes down to, if they make it economically harder for people to buy anything, whether it's a gun or not, then they are going to accomplish whatever they can accomplish. I don't think they care about the fact that there's going to be money involved. They're trying to do whatever they can to stop me from owning a gun, and I should not lose my right to own a gun because one of my fellow Americans or someone didn't use a gun correctly. It would be like I would tell the president or any gun advocate, I'll stop owning a gun if you stop driving your car. Okay, the question is, what does driving a car have to do with owning a gun? Well, there are by far more people killed in the United States in car accidents, whether it's from a drunk driver or a regular accident, than guns. And I don't see the government or Barack Obama stopping people from driving a car because it's reasonable sense. Obama would agree with me. I should not lose my right to drive a car because someone killed somebody in a car accident. Well, so then why are you trying to take away my right to own a gun? I shouldn't lose my right to own a gun because someone went out and killed somebody at a school in Connecticut.